Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. There's an old saying that goes, no man is an island, and this fact applies to every facet of life, reggae music inclusive. I mean, where would Sly and Robbie have been without each other? Same for Strakademus and Pliers, and the same goes for reggae icon Don Carlos, who would have been nowhere without his sidekick Goldilocks, aka Goldie or Gold. Eugene Spencer, aka Don Carlos, is undoubtedly among those mentioned anytime a roll call of reggae's biggest icons is done. But his rise to prominence was a culmination of more than 15 years of grinding that saw him struggle to get a break as a solo artist, get recruited to be part of the first incarnation of Black Uhuru, only for that project to collapse before eventually finding success as a lead singer in a mercurial duo that was Don Carlos and Gold at the beginning of the 1980s. Gold would prove to be the secret weapon and indispensable friend/colleague that he had needed from the start, and together, that pair would turn out incredible music all through the 1980s and well up into the 1990s, touring the globe and putting in awesome performances to the delight of their fans. For almost 2 decades, they were a prime example of friendship and harmony in an industry that is notorious for a cutthroat culture which has seen childhood friends and even family members part ways acrimoniously. But for the past 2 decades, Don Carlos has been a solo act. He's still an awesome performer, putting in age-defying shows, but longtime fans have since noticed the glaring absence of his longtime collaborator. Let's take a look at the story behind that dynamic duo and the question of what happened to Don Carlos' sidekick, Gold. Now this story begins with Don Carlos in the Waterhouse area of Kingston in 1972. After recording songs for the likes of Bonnie Lee and singer-producer Errol Dunkley with no success, Don Carlos was approached by 2 guys in his neighborhood named Ducky Simpson and Garth Dennis. They had heard that he was a talented singer and wanted him to be the third voice in a trio that they were trying to put together. He would jump at that opportunity, and that team would become the first incarnation of Black Uhuru. For 2 years, they would work on their craft, rehearsing non-stop and playing in small shows around Waterhouse. But after a while, his bandmates began to gravitate towards Trenchtown, which at the time was the most vibrant musical hub in all of Jamaica. They would hang out at Trenchtown daily, as Garth and Ducky were eager to draw inspiration from that environment. But Don Carlos was never too keen on this change of scene, and circumstances around that arrangement would eventually force him to leave Black Uhuru in disappointment after 3 whole years of grinding. Now back to square one, he was alone again and was left to continue his path as a solo artist in Waterhouse, while Ducky would rebuild Black Uhuru and release their first album, while Garth Dennis would join the Wailing Souls and score a massive #1 hit. But amidst all that gloom, Don Carlos would get a huge lift from a man called Goldilocks, but popularly known as Goldie. Over at Waterhouse, an aspiring artist named Alec Malcolm was making his presence felt all over that area. He was from the countryside and was born and bred in a town called Troy in the parish of Trelawney, but his elder sisters lived in Kingston, Waterhouse in particular, so he would often come on holidays in the city to spend time and would catch the music bug like many other youth in that city. So after a while, he decided that he wanted to be part of the action and would move there permanently, and he would get the nickname of Goldilocks because of his gold-colored hair, but was more popularly known in the streets as Gold. He began hanging out at recording studios and nightclubs as a way of mingling with producers and artists, and hopefully a way to catch a break, and over time became a big admirer of Don Carlos. And this is even before his stint with Black Uhuru. So when Don Carlos began to hustle to re-establish his solo career, a very strong bond would develop between the two. And whenever Don Carlos would go for a rehearsal, Goldie would be there. If Don went to the studio to work on a song, or went to a sound system dance to perform or just hang out, Goldie was always around and eager to lend support to whatever he was doing. So between 1977 and 1980, the pair would become inseparable pals and musical collaborators. Goldie would become a sidekick, co-writer, backup singer, confidant, and loyal friend. And he would provide backing vocals on Don Carlos' first album, Suffering, that came out in 1980. And in 1982, they would officially become a duo when they released the critically acclaimed album, Them Never Know Natty Dread Have Him Credential, officially as Don Carlos and Gold. And from all indications, it looked like this partnership with Gold was just the spark that his career would need. And by the time their second album, Harvest Time, came out that same year, it became an absolute smash hit, locally and internationally. Putting it mildly, Harvest Time was a phenomenal, brilliant, and irresistible masterpiece that was loaded with unforgettable anthems like Music Crave, White Squall,
White Squall a bite, whoa, not a break, nor a bite.
and title track Harvest Time.
I shall clean out the bad weeds, yeah, and separate them from the good cause.
And that duo would end the year on a high with the album Day to Day Living. As the 80s roared on, the duo of Don Carlos on Gold released classic after classic album, from the likes of 1983's Spread Out and Pure Gold down to 1984's Never Run Away. The 80s saw Don Carlos on Gold achieve wild international popularity and success, and this would continue right into the 1990s. And interestingly, in 1989, Don Carlos was recalled by Ducky Simpson to be part of a Black Uhuru reunion project. But Don would still stay loyal to his partnership with Gold up until the end of that second Black Uhuru stint in 1994. Went back to the studio that same year and released their album Ease Up not long after. Don Carlos and Gold would go on to a string of sold-out shows and concerts around the world to legions of fans who were excited to have the duo back on the road again. They were back to winning ways and traveled to Washington DC in 1998 to record their new album 7 Days a Week when tragedy would strike. In horrific circumstances, Goldie was shot in a robbery attempt and was left partially disabled. He would soon after suffer a devastating stroke and was unable to continue working as a recording artist. This sad event would bring the duo of Don Carlos and Gold to a sad end, leaving Don Carlos devastated. You see, his collaboration with Gold marked his comeback from the disappointment that he faced after his exit from Black Uhuru and represented the most memorable time of his life. He and his wingman had done spectacular things together from the 1980s right into the 1990s for 18 straight years. It took him a while, but Don Carlos got himself together and kept working, recording music and touring, becoming one of the busiest and biggest reggae artists on the planet till date. As for Goldie, very little has been heard of him ever since, and the last I've seen of him is this picture that he took with Don Carlos in the year 2000 in the US. His partial disability, plus him being unable to keep doing music, has seen him drop out of circulation, at least to the full extent of my knowledge. And unfortunately, I heard about him of recent that he since moved back to his family home in Trelawney and has been facing huge financial difficulties, been living rather poorly, flat broke, and depending on friends and family to survive. And there's very little information about his current condition, so if you have any information about him, please share it in the comment section below, as I'm sure many fans are eager to know how he's faring. I heard Don Carlos had been supporting him financially for a long time after the shooting and the stroke, but honestly I don't know if the pair are currently in touch. The duo of Don Carlos and Gold were an amazing and entertaining breath of fresh air, and while Don Carlos is deservedly enjoying his 70s as senior statesman of reggae music, it hurts my heart to know that his sidekick didn't enjoy the same level of good fortune. But I think there's still hope that Gold can get some form of assistance to help him lead a more comfortable life. I'll keep digging and hopefully we'll get some more information, and once I do, you'll definitely be the first to know all about it. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, God bless.